What's up guys? Okay, this is how to make the VSR bolt as smooth as possible, even with an M150 spring. Okay, so the first thing I've got to talk about is the piston. Now what I've done to this, I've just made it a bit heavier, so I've wrapped some solder around and electrical tape around that. Okay, so basically with the cylinder, what you don't want, with the piston, what you don't want is to have metal rubbing on metal in the cylinder. So what happens if you look into if your cylinder is quite sort of rough, what you're feeling is the metal from the piston grinding against the cylinder. What you really don't want that. So what I've done is basically it's having the same as guide rings. A lot of people have Teflon guide rings. What I've done is wrap a layer of electrical tape around this part of the piston. That basically just saves it from the metal of the piston rubbing against the cylinder. That just makes it quite a lot smoother in that part of there. You also don't want an O-ring that is too big or too small. You just want it absolutely perfect, and you want a lot of lube on this, like a lot of silicone oil or silicone grease. It needs to be silicone though, don't use any sort of Vaseline or something like that, so that can wreck the O-ring. Okay, so the spring guide. Now what I've got here is some bearings. You can get these from multiple shops. They're fairly cheap. These were kindly sent to me from Outdoor and Tactical. They're very nice, very smooth. Have many ball bearings in them, which is very nice. Just makes the pull extra smooth. You also make sure that it is straight and not bent, because that can cause the piston to also grind against the cylinder, which you do not want. Okay, so the spring guide stopper. This is really important, guys. I can't tell you how much of a difference this bit made. Okay, so what I realised is that the spring guide stopper, when pressure was applied to it by the spring, when it was in there, there was a lot of wobble and play in that, and you really do not want it. So when pressure was applied, this was actually sort of wobbling and was being sort of bent backwards. So what you want is a really nice spring guide stopper. I've done some sanding on this just to make the sears work perfectly. And to reduce the wobble, basically what you need is to make a shimming. I used a bottle cap. I cut a tiny little square out of it and I super glued that on. So what I did, that decreased the amount of sort of wobble it had by reducing the space inside of the trigger unit. So now when pressure is applied, there is no wobble at all. This is probably the most important step to all of it. It just makes everything straight and work properly. Also the bearings also add to that. So when this is on there and the piston is in, what happens is that they sort of slot in together and there's no wobble. So that's perfectly straight altogether. Okay. That's it for the spring guide stopper. Now the cylinder. Okay, so what I found is that the piston wasn't sort of sliding properly. It was getting sort of stuck in places. You can notice this if you push it forward, it sort of like stops at one point, and sort of you have to apply quite a bit of pressure to keep it going. So what I found, so this really helps actually. If you take the O-ring off, this should slide perfectly all the way down. If this doesn't do that, well, what happened to me is that part of this was actually sort of being bent down, and when this was coming in, the piston was actually getting sort of pushed in, and it was sort of getting stuck in between little parts. So what you need to do is just get some pliers or something similar, just bend the part where it is dipping down. You need to bend that in. That will just cause it to, that's what causes mine to go really smoothly. That's a good way to test it as well. Okie dokie. Right, guide rings. Okay, these are also quite important. So, guide rings are the things that sit inside your receiver, and they are what keeps this from going straight. So what these do, they sit in there, and the cylinder just glides through them. Now, what you need for these, like the stock ones are fine, but what you need is to cut a tiny little notch out of them. The back one is fine. Well, it's fine for me. And I didn't need to do this a lot, but you just need to add a tiny little sort of shim on the outside. If you've got quite a lot of play, you need to add a tiny little shim on the outside. And this basically creates less space, and there's less wobble in the cylinder when you pull the cylinder back and forward. This just creates it to be really smooth. You can do that. You can do that for both of them. Okay, now sears. You do need a good set of sears. These steel sears were kindly sent to me from Outdoor and Tactical. These are really, really nice sears. Very tough, very strong. As you can see, I've been using them quite a bit, and there's literally no wear at all. And because my VSR is a clone, they didn't fit exactly, weren't quite drop in, so I have to do a bit of filing and a bit of sanding to make it really smooth. Also, if your sear isn't going down properly when the trigger is pulled, what you need to do is just undo this screw, and that just basically makes it really smooth. As you see, when I'm pressing down, it doesn't quite do it. When I let go, it does. There we go. Now, there's also one last thing you need to do with the spring guide stopper. When that is in, basically this is just something to make it centered perfectly. So what I found out is that the notch on the spring guide stopper wasn't perfectly centered in the cylinder. You find that out by screwing everything in and leaving this and the barrel off, outer barrel. You need to leave everything completely out of the cylinder, and you need to put everything in here, and you need to see if the spring guide stopper is perfectly centered inside the cylinder. Now, if it's not, what I did, because mine wasn't, I created a little shim. It's just some paper that I folded up just to make a tiny little sort of spacing. So what I've done is just put that in there. If you can see that, I just put that in there, and when you push that up, it just makes it a little bit further down. What this does is make sure everything in the cylinder is perfectly central, so there's nothing touching the sides of the cylinder where possible. That is pretty much it. Okay guys, thank you very much for watching. I hope this helped. This is how to make the VSR 10 cylinder pull and push very smooth on a 45 degree sear setup. Thanks guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you later.